Good evening, NOTCAST watchers! As Dave Gunn always says when he introduces the band after the second or third song of every set at every Depeche Mode show. This is episode 402 of Mark's NOTCAST. If you've watched this before, you'll know about once or twice a week I talk about something that interests me, and looking at the viewing figures, not too many other people. Been about a week since the last one. This time round, I've been busy, so we're in the middle of a heat wave here in Britain for the first time in a long time. 34.8 degrees centigrade on Monday, the hottest day so far this year. My God, it was hot. I even wore shorts. That's how hot it was. And also on Friday and Saturday, I went to Brighton for the weekend. I went to the Wedding Present Festival at the edge of the sea. Saw the Wedding Present twice, Cinerama, the Mickey Bereni Trio. Everett True sings the songs of the fall. Oh, it wasn't great. The Ukrainians, featuring two members of the Wedding Present, as was, and generally had a really good time. Saw about 30 people I know, as well as about 570 people I don't. Then on Sunday, I went to see a band called Lottery Winners, and they played a birthday show for the singer in the afternoon at a place called the Tunbridge Wells Forum, the largest toilet in the world that's now been converted into a gig venue, and a very good gig venue it is too. So I've been a tad busy over the past few days, and that means that obviously occasionally the NOTCAST has to slide, primarily because obviously when I started doing this we were in the middle of lockdown, and I was having a conversation. Basically, I'm going to tell your internet friends this because it's boring, and I was talking about Reeves Gabrels of David Bowie, Tin Machine and The Cure, and realised that other people are not as interested in the intricacies of pop music as I am. So, going to rank the Depeche Mode output. I am not going to do the solo albums, because if you want to know how they work, it's very easy, isn't it? Dave Garn's solo albums aren't great because the musicians he works with, I don't particularly enjoy their musical tastes. The Recoil albums are fantastic, but they're an acquired taste. The Martin Gore stuff sounds like Depeche Mode instrumentals, because largely that's what it is, and it's really, really good. Really good. The compilations, there's a couple of remixes albums, not really important. There's really only 3 Depeche Mode compilations worth talking about. Singles 81-85, which is all the singles in order. Singles 86 to 98, that's all the singles in order. And then the best of Depeche Mode, which is a random selection of singles in something vaguely approaching an order, alongside some editions, a DVD, and a short documentary film. This is probably the best Depeche Mode compilation, but is it good? Not massively, because I think each one of the compilations has their good and bad points, and you have to pick out which one you want, really. So, on to the live stuff. I'm going to be quite quick. Depeche Mode have done a lot of live releases, by the way. Mostly in visual form, occasionally in audio form, and I'm going to go and rank through those. Now, I can't show you all of them on the grounds that there's so many of them, but you can probably tell these are my bottom 4, and they are some of the most recent tours that the band have done. It sounds cynical. It absolutely isn't. I think the current live lineup of Depeche, the version with Peter Gordino and Christian Eigner, Fletch, Martin and Dave, is a phenomenal live band. But Depeche Mode are 2 different bands at the same time. They're a band that plays on stage, and they're a band that makes records. And those are 2 very different organisms with 2 very different sounds and 2 very different approaches. The live version of Depeche Mode is almost a covers band playing Depeche Mode studio material, featuring members of Depeche Mode, if that makes sense, because Peter and Christian barely play on the albums. Fletch obviously now is dead, and therefore hasn't played on the albums, and one could argue doesn't really play on the live material, because I think I'm more audible on Depeche Mode live albums than he is. And also the set lists are largely exactly the same. So if you look at the set list that we have for this and for this, for let's not this one, because and for this, they're pretty much all the same. So the last songs in the set are, and let's quickly check. I Feel You, Enjoy the Silence, World in My Eyes, Behind the Wheel, Never Let Me Down Again, Just Can't Get Enough, Everything Counts, Personal Jesus. You know, it's all the same songs in roughly the same order every single time. Very good, of course, but it is kind of like watching a glum AC/DC with a bunch of synthesizers, because you know you're going to get the same old songs in roughly the same order every tour. So my least favourite Depeche Mode live release is 2002's Depeche Mode One Night in Paris, and it takes its name from a less than dignified leaked home porno tape of someone called Paris Hilton, who I know very little about. Bet you didn't have that on your band bingo card today. And it's a perfectly adequate release of an adequately shot show that's adequately performed. So why don't I like it? Well, the set list is a little weird, and I'll say why, because they don't have most of the hit singles in the set, because they were just coming off the back of the Singles 86 to 98 tour. So for this tour, if you wanted to see the singles, you had to see the previous tour. For this tour, for example, and let's just quickly check what you don't get. You don't get World in My Eyes. You don't get Policy of Truth. You don't get... Where's Walking in My Shoes? Yeah, okay. So yeah, you don't get that. You don't get Barrel of a Gun. You don't get Home necessarily, although some shows you did. That type of stuff. It's not big on hits. You know, you don't get Behind the Wheel. You don't get Strangelove or anything like that. Also, in terms of technical quality, whilst this is a more than serviceable live release, the video quality of this is pretty low. In the early days of DVDs, the video expectations were not, massively high. People were like, well, it's a DVD, it's bound to be better than VHS, and it is better than VHS. But the picture quality that you get on One Night in Paris is pretty low. It's highly pixelated. It's poor quality. It's not sharp at all. It is very easily and definitively the early days of the DVD format. And for a while, this was the only Depeche Mode live DVD that you could get. So, of course, I watched it a lot. And I remember, Exciter was the first tour that the band did where I saw multiple shows on the tour. It was the first tour that the band did where they didn't play some of the hit singles. And also, it's probably one of my least favourite Depeche albums. Oops, sneaking ahead there. So, One Night in Paris, an okay live DVD to support an okay album. It's not amazing. No, absolutely not. And then my second least favourite is Depeche Mode live in Berlin from the Delta Machine tour in 2013. This is the deluxe edition of it that features two DVDs, or I think it features two DVDs. Live in Berlin and Alive in Berlin, which are two different edits of the same show, plus the soundtrack, plus the Delta Machine album on 5.1 Blu-ray. Again, this tour is okay. I saw, I think, 4 shows on this tour. So I saw London, Rome, Birmingham, and another London show, actually, which was quite good. But the set list is a little predictable. 5 songs from the new album, the same hits in the same order, right at the end, the same Anton Corbijn films. Well, what you do get is a sense of every time that I saw Depeche around about, the sense, well, every 4 years we're going to go out, we're going to do the same things, we're going to play the same songs in the same order. It's not really going to matter. It's just the thing that we do, and we quite like it. And again, the last few songs of the set, oh look, A Question of Time, Enjoy the Silence, Personal Jesus, Just Can't Get Enough, I Feel You, Never Let Me Down Again. Okay, pretty predictable. So if you want a live album, again, it's a recording of 4 guys and one passenger making a racket in Berlin. And it's very good, but it's completely unnecessary. You don't need it any more than you need this one, Depeche Mode Tour of the Universe in Barcelona. This is a deluxe edition. Unsurprisingly, I buy the deluxe editions. I saw 2 shows on this tour. It was meant to be 3, but Dave cancelled because he had the cancer, and that's a good reason not to play a live show. Although it does mean that I didn't get to see Master and Servant or Strangelove performed in the band configuration. This is a 4-disc set. It's quite nice. Video quality is okay. The documentary disc is okay. It features some Anton Corbijn films, which actually I quite like watching. And it features a number of extra bits, some rehearsals, some live stuff, and some videos. But again, completely okay set list. In Chains, Wrong, Halter Feed, Jezebel, Come Back. Oh, the atypical 5 songs from the new album that never get played after the end of the tour kind of situation. It's quite good. I quite enjoyed it. Good tour, really good tour. But again, the last few songs, what have we got? Oh, Policy of Truth, In Your Room, I Feel You, Enjoy the Silence, Never Let Me Down Again, Behind the Wheel, Personal Jesus. Sounds predictable, doesn't it? Because it is. So again, not amazing. You can probably have, here's a list of complaints about things. So that the next one actually is the Playing the Angel tour. But, I very naughtily skipped ahead because during the Touring the Angel period, the band did partnered up with Live Here Now and released live soundboard recordings of every show from the tour. This is the last show from the tour, which was also unofficially pressed using the soundboard recording onto a 2-disc set. So this is the last show from Dusseldorf of Touring the Angel. Oh, it's quite good. It's okay, completely okay. Nothing too fancy, nothing too special. I saw them a week before at the O2 Arena in London, where they added, where they played a pretty good set list, but I was right at the back. Thanks, O2 and your shitty pre-sale. I bought them on the day they took place, and I was like 11 rows from the back in a 20,000 seat arena. Fuck, annoying. This is the first show of the tour in Tel Aviv, in Israel, and this has a stonker of a set list because it features rare performances of Peace, In Sympathy, Master and Servant, and Strange Love, which they dropped by the time they got round to the UK in December and February. So this is a good live set. If you need to, go for it. So this period, Touring the Angel, the next one, was again not a favourite of mine. Again, really good, but not a favourite. Again, the same 5 or 6 songs from the new album. So for this one, it's A Pain I'm Used To, John the Revelator, Precious, Suffer Well, Macro, I Want It All, The Sinner in Me. That's 6 of the new songs, isn't it? Yeah, 6 new songs. Plus, let's have a look at the last 7 songs in the set. I Feel You, Behind the Wheel, World in My Eyes, Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, Just Can't Get Enough, Everything Counts, Never Let Me Down Again. Well, bugging me backwards. That's not a surprise, is it? It's a very predictable one. And again, quite a nice set, quite a nice production, well shot, adequately shot, I think it's fair to say, and a number of other things, but nothing too amazing or astounding. At this point, you don't need Depeche Mode live releases, which is odd because I then went and bought 3 live CDs from the tour. Again, tour teaming up with Live Here Now. 3 shows. These are Leipzig, the Wireless Festival in London, and the Mexico City show at the Forest Sol Stadium. Again, for a while, and you can still pick these up if you know where to look. Just have a look on Amazon or Discogs, and you can find at least some shows for £7 or £8. If you're looking for a specific show, they get expensive, but if you don't care which show you get, £7 or £8 a pretty good entry level cost that you've got for it. So now into 1, 2, 3, 5. The 6th in the Depeche Mode live albums is Live Spirits, which features Spirits in the Forest, the final live show the band played with Fletch when he was alive, the final show of the Spirits tour of 2018. Again, presented on Blu-ray, DVD, audio CD, featuring the completely unnecessary Spirits in the Forest documentary, which tries to do 101 but fails. And then also obviously the Live Spirits recording of the last show. Now the reason this is 6th and not further up is because 2 shows were filmed, 31 songs were performed over those 2 nights. Only 20 songs or 21 songs are on this release, which is stingy as fuck, man. Because, for example, you don't get live versions of So Much Love, Corrupt, Barrel of a Gun, Strange Love, etc. You get a standard late period Spirit set list, this time featuring I think only 3 songs from the then most recent album, which are Going Backwards, Cover Me, Poison Heart is in here. Well, that's Where's the Revolution, and that's pretty much it. See, and a cover version of Bowie's Heroes. So not amazing. Okay, actually, this is where I start to go, well, you probably need to pick this up because it's Fletch's last live show with the band, and that in itself carries some importance and some meaning. Number 5 on my Depeche Mode live releases. Here's a song for ya. Depeche Mode, The World We Live In, and live in Hamburg. Sadly, locked only into the now dead and dying VHS format. The last VHS player, I think, was manufactured in 2006. So the most recent VHS player is 18 years old, and it's old enough to vote. That's going to blow your tiny, fragile eggshell mind, isn't it? I let go of my last VHS player around 2008, 2009 when it finally died. It just stopped working, and there's no point. And pretty much everything is not on VHS anyway. It's on YouTube now, thanks to everyone ripping things. There's not much that isn't. That's the first sell-through released Depeche Mode live VHS from 1984. It's very good. It captures the band in a young and enthusiastic environment, not quite knowing what they're doing, only 4 years after releasing their first single. And it has a degree of energy and enthusiasm before the drugs took hold. Right, number 4 or number 3, depending on your point of view. Actually, I'm going to put this at number 3, is 101, the live album that really encapsulated and captured Depeche Mode playing their first stadium headlining show. So I was watching this and I was like, wow, Depeche Mode headline stadiums? What I didn't realise is that wasn't like just an average Tuesday in Arkansas, or is it Arkansas? But it was a pretty rare thing. This is the best of Depeche Mode live, the best document released by Depeche Mode live from the 80s, just before Violator and the drugs took hold of absolutely everything. This is where it's at. Lots of last performances for great songs such as Pleasure Little Treasure, for example, Sacred. What else got Nothing, for example, didn't got the People are People getting their last live performances ever on this, which is a staggering 36 years ago. If you have to choose between the DVD and the CD, I'd go for the CD. The CD has the full show on it. The DVD has a documentary and an hour-long excerpt of the live show. There is a fancy pants expensive Blu-ray version of this, but I don't own it because I've already bought 101 4 times. I don't need to buy it again. Then number 2, or number 1, depending on your point of view. Number 2 is the Devotional era. If you're going to go for any release of this, Devotional, the DVD, is the one to go for. It's as near to a full live set as you can get, presented in sequence and in order of Depeche with their last tour in their classic 4-piece configuration. Now, before anyone goes, wow, how many Depeche Mode fans does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is always going to be 20. 1 to do it and 19 to say it would have been better when Alan was in the band and he should come back. I am mocking you, by the way, wild fanatics. But no, Devotional is, in my opinion, my favourite live visual release of the band, and very possibly my favourite live experience to go back and listen to. It's the only live release to feature that classic 4-piece lineup performing songs from Violator and songs of Faith and Devotion, as well as a small kind of throwback to what happened previously. But, and it is a big but, it's not the full show. It's missing some songs. I think it's missing... Yeah, it certainly is, yeah. So it's missing Halo and Policy of Truth, which are available as extra tracks on the DVD release. And it also just feels a little bit truncated, so it doesn't have Get Right With Me on it. It doesn't have One Caress, which were performed at some shows on the tour. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on your point of view, you have Songs of Faith and Devotion live, the worst Depeche Mode live album by far. This is just the 10 songs from Songs of Faith and Devotion, played live, played in the order of the record, not in the order of the set list, in perfectly adequate live environments. This is awful. You don't need it. You don't have to buy it. If you want to, pick up literally a bootleg CD of any other show from the tour, although my favourite is this one here, I Feel You, which was broadcast from Crystal Palace on the 31st of July 1993, mixed in the studio by Alan Wilder, using overdubs from the Livan and Lil shows, which were recorded for the Devotional DVD to fix occasional vocal flubs. And effectively, this is the best thing you will get to a 1990s full-length Depeche Mode classic live album. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best live recordings I've ever heard. It really is. It's just, there's nothing that I don't like about this at all. It's got Enjoy the Silence, Everything Counts, Personal Jesus, In Your Room. It was also the last tour which, to me, it felt like the band were living in that moment and not aware of their position as a legacy act. The next time they toured was the 86 to 98 tour, and that is where the band did a determined retrospective of all of their singles and played them all in order. But my favourite Depeche Mode live album, and you will have difficulty finding this, is Depeche Mode live for the Royal Cancer Trust at the Royal Albert Hall, or the Teenage Cancer Trust at the Royal Albert Hall on the 17th of February 2010. This show, the band played a unique and unusual set list. They had a string section with them, and Alan Wilder came back and played Somebody with the band. So I saw the only time that Alan Wilder played with the band after he left. This was a phenomenal show, one truly for the ages, an amazing piece of history, probably my favourite and preferred Depeche show, even better than Glasgow Barrowlands in 2017. So yes, this is my favourite Depeche Mode live album. Now, what about the studio albums, you ask? Well, how quick can Mark go? Well, how low can you go? Let's go. So, my least favourite Depeche Mode studio record, and this is where I deeply, deeply regret placing them somewhere that's not easy for me to access, is the debut. That's right, Speak and Spell, with a ridiculous picture of a swan inside a paper bag, which just looks bloody awful. The cover's bad, the songs are less than great, the sequencing is pretty shoddy. It has two of the worst Depeche Mode songs of all time on it. And that's not my opinion, that's the opinion of Martin Gore and Fletch themselves. So those two worst songs are No Disco and What's Your Name. Hey, you're such a pretty boy, you're such a pretty boy, you're so pretty. Awful, awful piece of crap. Musically, these are not bad songs. Production-wise, sonically, not bad songs. Lyrically, absolute dog shit. I do not like it. If, of course, the band had taken a slightly different approach and they put the single Dreaming of Me on the album and the respective B-sides Shout and Ice Machine, we'd be talking a much, much better record. You know, What's Your Name, No Disco, maybe Boys Say Go should have been B-sides. But that's not what happens, you know, and ours is not to play the hands we want, but the cards that we're dealt, as the great Reg Holdsworth from Coronation Street has it. So coming up second, i.e. the second worst Depeche album, is A Broken Frame. The second album, you sense a trend here, the band get better as they get older. Doesn't always hold up, but I think over 17 studio albums or thereabouts, this will come at number 16. So A Broken Frame, the second album, the first one with Martin Gore writing all of the songs. And the reason this is my second favourite is because it had some songs that should never be on the album. More correctly, I think Monument is not great. A Photograph of You is awful, and The Meaning of Love is anodyne popcorn nonsense. If you'd have put Now This Is Fun and Get the Balance Right on there, both of which, by the way, are on singles, A's and B sides, you'd have a much better record. But you don't. So rather than living in a fantasy world where I change the track listings around, I just have to say that A Broken Frame is about number 15 on my list of 16 records. There is also, by the way, from that period, 3 live 12 inches recorded at the Hammersmith Odeon, also available on a bootleg LP, which is effectively the first Depeche Mode live album, although it was released as B-sides. And this was a 55-minute live set that was also intended to be released as a VHS sell-through, but they decided not to, and it was broadcast on television in Sweden and therefore memorialised at the Hammersmith Odeon forever on YouTube. It's a good live show, by the way, really good live show, but not amazing because the band is still becoming who they are. Now, if Depeche Mode is split at this level, I wouldn't own any of their records. I don't think they'd be good enough, frankly, but that's another position, isn't it? 13 on the Depeche Mode albums, studio albums, out of the 15 that they've released. Again, you're going to sense a trend here. It is 1983's Construction Time again. Also, source of the shortest NOTCAST about Depeche Mode I've done, because I have so little to say about this record. In the oldie days, of course, you'd actually fly somebody to the mountain with a huge anvil and you'd take a shot at it, which is exactly what happened on the cover of this. These days, you'd Photoshop everything, of course, wouldn't you? But that's not that. That is this. And again, the graphic design by Brian Griffin is very good, but it doesn't feel like Depeche Mode to me. And it does have some pretty unamazing songs on it. More Than a Party is not great. Pipeline is a bit of a dirge. The landscape is changing. These are primitive songs, so you can see there's an evolution of the songwriting. It's becoming less terrible. It's probably the best way to describe it. This would be the first Depeche album where I think some of the album tracks would be ones I'd genuinely be interested in hearing played live. So for example, And Then, or maybe Shame would be good to hear live, but that's never going to happen, of course. But it's okay. This is 13 on the list of Depeche Mode albums. There were loads and loads of radio broadcasts that did the rounds about then. This is one of them, live in Amsterdam, presumably at the Paradiso, which is a converted church and a phenomenal venue. In 1983, the show was broadcast on the radio, and lo and behold, here's one of those cheap bootleg LPs that you can get these days that appear for about 3 weeks at various websites and then disappear forever. But yeah, so not so bad. 12. Oh, here's where we get into the stuff I remember coming out. 12 is Exciter. This is the most inappropriately named Depeche Mode album that there is. If the name of the album reflected the contents, it would be called Borer, and certainly not Thriller. This is the product of Martin Gore's writer's block. So you have some unexceptional songs in here. You've got some good ones. You've got Shine, for example, Free Love, I Feel Loved, When the Body Speaks. Those are quite good. And then you've got something like Breathe, which has that lyric. And let me just quickly check. I heard it on Monday and I laughed for a while. I heard it on Tuesday. I heard it on Wednesday. I heard it on Thursday. I heard it from Peter, who heard it from Paul, who heard it from someone I don't know at all. I heard it from Mary, who heard it from Ruth, who swore on the Bible she's telling the truth. I heard it from Simon, who heard it from James, confirming with Sarah that I was to blame. I heard it from Joseph, who heard it from John, who said with conviction that all hope was gone. Not a great album. Badly produced, not sonically, but in terms of arrangements, the arrangements are flabby, the bass lines are boring, the production is unexceptional. It sounds like everything's come out of a software as opposed to hardware. The songs just aren't there. There's too many songs, and not enough of them are great on this album. So Exciter is my number, I think it's my number 12, I think. Or maybe it should be 12B. But it's my number 12 and it's not great at all. Then, of course, we have, and that's the first one that bucks the trend about chronology, by the way, because number 11 is Some Great Rewards, which, despite it saying it's mini, is definitely not. It was mini on price, it certainly wasn't on anything else. This is the only Depeche Mode album whose cover shot I've actually been at the location, because it was a factory that was near Dudley Merry Hill in the West Midlands, which is where I grew up. So unsurprisingly, although also unknowingly, I have been at the location that is this album cover. It's all been demolished, of course, because everything changes. But this is a good album, very good actually. It has some great songs on it. I think it's got one of the most annoying Depeche Mode songs on it, which is Stories of Old. But everything else on it is solid. The songwriting takes a good, strong leap. There's 9 songs as opposed to 11 songs, 2 of which aren't very good. And it sonically, Alan Wilder has really stepped up to the plate at this point and is producing amazing sounds and not amazing, but actually really strong, solid arrangements where there's no flab in it. Sometimes, especially on Exciter, there are sections where I listen to bars and I go, that shouldn't be there, or maybe you should combine the 2 bars so you have the bass line and the strings both coming in at the same bar. There's no sense of padding it out to fill out a CD. With Some Great Reward, it's concise, it's compact, it's excellent. Again, loads of bootlegs released during this period. Live in Basel 1984, which went in to contribute to a huge number of B-sides. Very good, but again, one of those blink and you'll miss it forever releases. Also broadcast on the radio. Here is a BBC transcription disc of Depeche Mode live at Hammersmith Odeon 1984. Great show. Track this down if you can. Difficult to get now, but really interesting to listen to. Number 10, I think. Number 10? Maybe number 10. Spirits, the last album released by the classic three-piece, one would say classic, lineup of the Dave, the Mart and the Fletch there on motorbikes. And with Spirit, I got a sense of it was more a case of, well, every 4 years we release an album. It's about 60 minutes long. It's got about 11 songs on it, and then we tour a bit and we make loads of money. So there's a sense of complacency inside Spirit that I'm not really a huge fan of. Despite the fact that Mojo said it was the best album in years, they are bullshit. Because that's just simply not how it is. Spirit is okay. It's got some really good songs in it. Going Backwards is great. Where the Revolution is pretty good. You Move is okay. Cover Me is amazing. Everything else, so much love is pretty good. Everything else is kind of a bit blah. It's like just another Depeche Mode album track, and it's going to sound very bitchy, and it's not meant to come across that way. But what Spirit really reminds me of is one of those later period AC/DC albums, maybe like Ball Breaker, for example, where you've got songs with names like Cover You in Oil, or Hot Rod, or whatever they're called. I don't know. What Do You Do for Money, Honey? Although I suspect that's a Bon Scott era. Where it's just like just another album. They haven't got anything necessarily new to say. There's 4 good songs, there's 3 okay songs, and there's 3 that are pretty blah. And then that's all of a sudden where you are with Spirit. It's just another Depeche Mode album, and what a shame that it was the last one that Fletch played on, because the one that came out after that is significantly better. Continuing the theme. Again, here we have Spirit's predecessor, again number 9 on my list of Depeche Mode albums, the Delta Machine, which is again another album made by 3 guys, and again this is okay. It's not amazing. This version is, and let me just quickly check, 17 songs. So on the vinyl configuration, this is a Depeche Mode double album, although of course the links between double and single albums have collapsed because everything is a playlist on Spotify these days. 17 songs doesn't necessarily, and having a double album, it's like some people put out double albums that shouldn't be double albums just to justify a price tag and to tell you it's on 2 pieces of 180 gram virgin vinyl. Oh, you should buy it. And by the way, it's going to be $43.99, or if you're buying a copy of Blur's Park Life from HMV, $54.99. You can buy 55 copies just of Park Life from Poundland for that much money. Delta Machine has some really strong songs on. It has some not strong songs on, but it's got 3 or 4 genuinely really strong Depeche tracks. So, for example, Should Be Higher is one of my favourites. It's in my top 5. Angel, Heaven, Secret to the End, they're pretty good. Soothe My Soul is pretty great, especially the ZZ Top remix. But it's not, you're not sitting there and going, oh, you're smashing the barriers and pushing forward the sounds. It's like, well, it's another Depeche album, isn't it? And talking of another Depeche album, this is where you get into nothing but classics, because this is Black Celebration, the album that I think showed really that Depeche could make really strong, solid albums without a hint of flab on them at all. This has Black Celebration, Fly on a Windscreen, Question of Lust, A Question of Time, bit dodgy lyrics on that. Stripped, World Full of Nothing, Dressed in Black, New Dress. Very solid, very good songs, very well arranged, immaculately produced. 1986, great album, and aside from the fact that it has 3 songs sung by Martin in a row on side 1, there's nothing I would change about it at all. So this is the first of the Depeche albums I wouldn't change at all. And then we're on to, and I think this is number 7, 2009's Sound of the Universe. Depending on which configuration you can get a double vinyl in a gatefold sleeve. Yeah, that's a gatefold clear PVC sleeve. They aren't cheap, but my God, they're sexy. And there's a super fancy pants box set version as well. But for today's purposes, I'm showing you the vinyl edition of it because, frankly, let's face it, if you're watching this, you're probably one of the vinyl people, and that's okay because so am I. This, of course, had that sense of, sometimes you listen to albums and you kind of go, is it going to be as good as the last one? No matter what people put in the... No, it isn't. It can't be. It can't be as good as the last one. Is it going to be good? Hell, I'll take that. This is good. And it has In Chains, Whole to Food, Wrong, Fragile Tension, In Sympathy, Peace, Come Back, perfect. There's not bad songs on this. The sequence maybe I would change, but generally, apart from Jezebel, every song on here is good and solid. And it also has a fabulous picture on the inside of the gatefold there, talking about the universe itself, and a map of the world from, I think, New York's World's Fair, whenever that was made, with the band members underneath it. Really like that picture. Maybe should have been on the cover. Again, don't know what that means on the front. Anton's going to Anton, and so be it. Right. Ultra is next. And I think there's only, 5 to go after this? 4, maybe? No, 5. Ultra is a great record. I would change it. I'd change the sequence to it. I'd change a couple of the tracks. But what there is on here is really good. The only thing I don't like about Ultra is the fact that because their band are learning to walk again after Alan's departure, they're effectively trying to create what the version of the band is going to sound like. You can hear that experiment taking place in your ears as it happens. So songs like, for example, The Bottom Line, Free State, The Love Thieves, you can listen to that and you go, yeah, you're trying to learn how to be a new version of Depeche, and it's interesting to hear, but it's not necessarily rewarding when you come back to it 27 years later. You're kind of listening to it and going, this 27 years later hasn't necessarily aged amazingly. That said, Barrel of a Gun, Home, It's No Good, Useless, Sister of Night, and Insight, very strong songs. Really, really like them. And the tour didn't happen, so there you go. Right, I think number 5 is Memento Mori from last year. The album which is only, again, for the first time, the duo configuration of Depeche, of Dave and Martin following Fletcher's untimely and unexpected death. So you've got, effectively, Depeche Mode going from being a trio to a duo. And that was unexpected. I wasn't sure. I thought Depeche might have been finished, actually, at that point, but they weren't, thankfully. And that they showed that the things that Fletch brought to the band were things that weren't necessarily immediately apparent sonically. So, for example, it was things like mixing decisions, sequencing, commerce, prices of tickets, prices of T-shirts, routing, releases of singles, those type of things. Whereas for this one, it was like, well, there's a studio album, and it's okay. And there's some really good songs on Memento Mori. My Cosmos is Mine, Wagging Tongue, Ghosts Again, My Favourite Stranger. Caroline's Monkey is quite good. Before We Drown is quite good. But it's one of those albums where you sit there and go, when it was being written, were you writing it because you had something to say? Or were you writing it because it's been about 4 or 5 years since the last tour. I've got some songs. We could tour, we could play some stadiums, we could make loads of money, and we could do that. And I'm not quite sure whether the album itself, how that will age, because it's very, very new and very, very fresh. But it does feel revitalised compared to the previous albums, compared to Spirit and Delta Machine in particular, which felt a little bit kind of like, well, this is what we do, and if you don't like it, in another 4 years, there'll be another record for you to listen to, and you probably won't like that either. But you'll come and see us on tour, and we'll play the same 7 songs, the last 7 songs of the set every time, so you get that nice hour of Depeche goodness. Which means we now have 4 albums left. What can they be? Which one will be number 1? Well, that will shock you, won't it? This is Music for the Masses. This is number 4. And Music for the Masses is an album I both love and do not love for loads of reasons. This, by the way, is the 12-inch that was sent only and exclusively to HMV in the first week of release, featuring the maxi mix of Strange Love and the aggro mix of Never Let Me Down Again. So that's an unusual little rarity there. Music for the Masses, it has some very strong songs on it. It's the album I struggle with the most out of Depeche, because I think that it's the one which has perhaps the least satisfactory LP mixes and the least satisfactory sequence. So, for example, it starts on Never Let Me Down Again, the song that mostly ends most of their gigs. What I regard to be one of their finest songs, Strange Love, is available on this album in a re-recorded form where it's significantly slowed down as track 3. It ends on Pimp, which is not great. I just think the sequence is a little off on this album, but I've put my preferred sequence on Music for the Masses episode. It's an album of really good songs as opposed to a really good album, if that makes sense. But it does also, has also brought to the world 101, the live album, which I've mentioned previously, is a fantastic live album and one of the best ever. Certainly 101 was an album that I listened to and I thought, okay, I'm in. This is me. Really good. So there's only three albums left now. What can they be? Well, Playing the Angel is number 3. The 2005 album by Depeche, which to me was, after Exciter, showed that the band had really changed how they'd worked. So this is the first album which had writing contributions from Dave Garn in it. I think he wrote Suffer Well and a couple of other songs. And they sounded like great Depeche tracks, actually. They just really worked very, very well. We also have A Pain That I'm Used To, John the Revelator, The Sinner in Me, Precious. I mean, these are really good, solid songs. Precious is a Depeche classic. You know, most bands, when they get to 30 years in, they aren't writing songs as good as Precious, because most bands aren't as good as Depeche Mode. But Precious is a song that sounded like it could have come out of any period from the band's history and would have been phenomenal. We've got, Lillian, The Darkest Star, I Want It All, Nothing's Impossible. Some really, really good songs on this album, with good, strong production. It really sounds like a band reborn and getting that sense of purpose back to them. Maybe a sense of purpose which slowly they lost over a period of time, but not a sense of purpose that fully abandoned them ever. They just became a band that released very, very good at songs as opposed to very, very good albums. And that means number 2, because if you're clever, you'll know from number 2 what number 1 is. Number 2 is Violator, the album that everybody likes and I think is merely bloody brilliant. This is not the best Depeche Mode album. The best Depeche Mode album is, of course, Songs of Faith and Devotion, which is The Dawning of Alan. Violator, I saw the band on this tour. Great show. Danced my legs down to the knees. Also, solid record, very well produced, immaculately sequenced. The only thing I'd change about it, and it isn't that much really, is I put Dangerous, the B-side of Personal Jesus, after Personal Jesus on the album. But this is 9 amazing classic songs by Depeche Mode. It's World in My Eyes, Sweet is Perfection, Halo, Personal Jesus, Waiting for the Night, Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth, Blue Dress and Clean. Each one of them, all killer, no filler, everything works absolutely perfectly. I cannot criticise Violator at all. And here, by the way, is one of the merch booklets, which was given to me after I saw them at the Birmingham NEC, including the Depeche Mode book Strangers by Anton Corbijn, which I can't really see is £12.95. It's a bit more than £12.95 these days. So if you want to buy a copy of Strangers, I think that's going to set you back about 120 quid. Really could do with a reprint, actually. Although, of course, Taschen did the Anton Corbijn ACDM 8118 book recently, which revisits a lot of the same material, but of course in a more expensive fashion. So that only leaves us with my favourite Depeche Mode album, my number 1 in the ranking, the album that I didn't get to see played live because I didn't get to see any of the big bands in 1993 that I wanted to, because of the mendacious and capricious policies of the then Conservative government. Yes, I don't like them. This is Songs of Faith and Devotion. This is my favourite Depeche Mode album. This is a work of genius. The production is incredible. The sonics alone should see this album kind of lauded forever. The songs themselves, very, very strong. So we've got, Walking in My Shoes, one of the greatest blues songs ever written, a song that I think will be rediscovered by someone in future, and everyone will go, my God, where is it? Much the same way as they would Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, for example. You could imagine a grizzled Tom Waits coming out of semi-retirement to do a cover of Walking in My Shoes and everybody suddenly realising how good it is. It's got, I Feel You, a kind of gritty, somewhat flippant kind of half parody of the Stooges and Delta Rock, but at the same point taking Depeche Mode and turning them into something completely unexpected, but it still sounds like Depeche Mode, and that is a 4-piece rock band, which is really odd because it's mostly 3 guys with synthesizers and a guy with lots of tattoos, as Bon Scott has it. Condemnation, again, an amazing blues type song, which you could imagine being sung by someone like Ella Fitzgerald, for example. In a smoky dive bar in New York in 1960 or thereabouts. A song, because sometimes the best songs are songs that sound so familiar, like you've known them all your life and yet you only just discovered them. Condemnation is one of those songs. I think it's Dave Gahan's favourite Depeche Mode song. It's not far off with that position. We've got Mercy and You, which is, probably one of the worst tracks on the album. It's still bloody brilliant. Judas, In Your Room, which is my favourite single Depeche Mode song, alongside Rush, In Your Room. It's I must admit, in the days when I had a more active sex life, I did used to put this album on, and I really enjoyed it in those days. Get Right With Me, which has a phenomenal drum sound, which is later stolen from Massive Attack's Mezzanine album, One Caress, and then Higher Love. This is my favourite Depeche Mode record, and that's nothing to do with Alan being in the band or not. It's because it's the perfect melding of machine and man, rock and roll, and synthesizers and sound, and somehow it reaches a spot that nobody else has really done, which is taking what feels like previously unheard blues classics that you've known all your life somewhere in your unconscious, and then turning them into a mixture of kind of like a modern perverse version of rock and a strangely broken version of synth music. So basically this album, I love it to bits, and I will arm wrestle you if you disagree with me. Well, I won't, we'll hug it out, but I am right in this. Songs of Faith and Devotion is my favourite Depeche Mode album, and it's one of my favourite albums of all time. And I hope that you agree. Right, that's about 45 minutes on 15 Depeche Mode albums and however many live albums. I could talk forever about this. I probably won't, on the grounds that 47-ish minutes is about the right length to come out with one of these episodes. And also, if you're watching me whilst you're doing, for example, the washing up or something, you now should have just about finished, put the last load in to dry and spin, and therefore you can go off and do something less boring instead. So thanks for spending the time with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you sometime soon. Ciao, lovelies. See you later.